Que pasa, mi amigos? It is I, Nima. Today, I want to talk about Tales of Arise. I'm a big fan of the series. It's a very long-running series. But before I get into it, I want to answer one question that has been asked a lot. Do I need to play any of the other Tales games? And the answer is no. Tales of Arise, just like Tales of Vesperia, just like Tales of Berseria, they're all games that are part of a long-running series, but each story is separate, much like Final Fantasy or Suikoden. For this game, though, I did record it on a PlayStation 5, and I'm going to do my best to not give out any spoilers. In fact, I'm probably going to do a pretty weak job with the story to try to keep the element of surprise. It's never fun to play an RPG when you know the story. And with that being said, the story does kind of take place in two different worlds. It's the haves and the have-nots, if you will. The story is essentially a story about a group of oppressed people and their overseers, the Renans and the Dawnans. The two things that I will say is you kind of get to see both aspects of those worlds, and in fact, your party itself has members from both sides. It starts off simple enough, like a lot of RPGs, where the story itself seems to be of great evil versus good. But as the story goes, you really start to understand the intricacy, and it really starts to pick up in complexity as well. And that's where I don't want to ruin it for you, but the Dawnans are people who are enslaved by the Renans, and they're looking for their own freedom and their own ability to escape this world. As you go on, you have to face early on, I believe it's 5 different lords, is what you're told. And from there, the game just kind of blows up from there. And it gets bigger and bigger. Like I said, I've done a really bad job explaining the story, but I don't want to give too much away. And I have beaten it, and it'd take me about 45 hours or so. There's a lot of side quests. There's a lot in the actual game that makes you keep coming back. And I think that's what I really like about the story of this game, is there's not a point when I put it down and was okay with being gone for a while. Meaning, there's some games that I've reviewed that it was kind of a drag. The story was not engaging, and I've had that with a lot of games recently. This is not one of those games. The story is amazing, and it just kept me engaged, it kept me interested. Part of the storytelling aspect is done in a comic book style, like a lot of games are recently, I've noticed. And it does a really good job of giving you a little bit of control of how much you hear and how much you don't hear. There is a complete journal where you can go back and learn, but maybe you kind of skipped through some stuff or you didn't see something. You can kind of refresh yourself on what's going on with each individual character and each individual region. The other aspect of storytelling that they really, I think, nail, and they've always done it, and this is what makes the Tales game so great, is so there's a camping spot at each biome, at least one, multiple in most. But you can sit down and you can cook, and it will help boost your stats for a given amount of time depending on what food you make. Then you can also interact with your other characters and learn more about them and develop a closer relationship. Now, not only aside from the fact that it's a good storytelling element and gives some more depth to characters and to make the game more well-rounded, you also gain different abilities that you can combine with these other characters the closer and closer you get to them. Now, as for the graphics, I think a lot of people have been talking about how great graphically this game looks. When it came out on the demo version, I think about a month ago, people were blown away by the graphics. And I got to be honest, I didn't play it. I knew that this was going to be a day one buy for me. I love the Tales games. I knew I was going to be... And I just heard that you couldn't carry your save over, and I understand why now, because I've seen people play the demo, and the demo takes place quite a bit further in the game. So I didn't play that, but the graphics are great. They are everything is advertised. The interesting thing I found with the graphics, though, is they seem to grow over time. That sounds weird, and actually Johnny Millennium, he mentioned that as well, that as you get further in the game, it's like the graphics get better. I don't know how this is or why it is, but I'm guessing it's due to like your environment and to lighting and things of that nature that really just bring out the graphical integrity in this game. Early on, you're kind of in a valley, dusky kind of. I don't know. Think of like a desert, desolated area where there's like no trees or anything like that, and even that, it still has good graphics because like half of the freaking world is on fire that you're in. I'm kidding. It's not, but you'll run into like fire, and you'll run into these other elements. You'll run into like a little bit of water, and they look amazing. But the environment itself, really early on, is very desolate, and it doesn't really expand onto those graphics. Then you go into like more of a cold environment, and there again, you've got like kind of a single kind of. I don't want to say single, but this like monotone of whites and grays and things like that. So you don't really see it pop, I would say, until like the third biome when you get into like this forest area. And then you can really see a lot of things happening. You're getting a little bit out of that like that dark, dingy area, and you'll really start to see it, I think look at its best. And even from there on, it gets just better and better. I can't put the graphics in and not talk about character design and all of that. And I love the character design. I think they're fantastic the way they look. I will say one thing is I found this like really dumb. It's a minor complaint about the game, but for like the first hour, maybe 2 hours, you're known as Iron Mask. And the main character has this iron mask over his face, his whole face. And they keep alluding to, like, oh, I wonder what he looks like under there, and he's so mysterious, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, dude, you put the character without the mask on the cover of the game. Like, literally, when you start the game, you see him without the mask on. So you know that this is a temporary thing, and it's, I don't know, I thought it was, like, kind of dumb. Like, why did you, like, shoehorn that in there for no reason? It's obviously, like, not for the gamer, but why would you make a story element for the NPCs as well? That there's no longevity to that whole situation. I have no idea why it's there. It's kind of ridiculous, but the rest of them is really cool. One thing I thought was kind of interesting too, like when you talk about the graphics and the art style, there's almost like a cell shading, watercolor aspect, and sometimes when you are in that comic book style of narrating, some of the characters I think are actually, they're done really well, but in a very like watercolor style. So it's not super descriptive. And I don't know, like part of it kind of bothered me. I'll be honest. Like it wasn't a big issue, but I was just like, this game is so detailed and the graphics are so good. But at certain points when they're talking to certain characters, it's like, well, it doesn't look like he has a nose. Like the way they did the art style, they, stuff like that, like descriptive things were not really there. But aside from that, no, it's great. I mean, graphics are phenomenal. Character design, flawless, I think, in so many ways. I haven't really liked a main character, and just actually not even main character, all characters, as much as I like these characters. It's gone since maybe like Persona 5 was the last time I thought like, oh, these characters really look good, and they congeal, yet they are different, and I respect that difference. Sound wise, is it's solid. I would say it's probably the weakest part of the game, and I don't even think that it's bad. I wouldn't say the music is bad or anything. It's just very generic, if you ask me. I know some people are going to fall in love with it, and they just love that kind of. I'm not that guy, and I've said this multiple times. I often play video games with like my headset on and not listening to the game. I'm usually listening to like podcasts or something like that. I'm not a very auditory person. In fact, I'm most likely my ADD or whatever it is kicks into the point where I need another stimulus. So I often don't listen to like voice work or to music. And so I'm a really bad representative of it. But with these reviews, I do try to give like a good couple hours of uninterrupted gaming where I can fully envelop myself into the games. And I will say, like, yeah, the sound, the music, and the character, it's fine. Like, does what it does. Like, it's not bad, it's not great. I wasn't blown away with it. Like Skyward Sword, I thought had great music. This I think is fair. It's good. The other thing that I really kind of maybe missed but need to talk about is all of the anime cutscenes. I thought it was like really cool. They did a really good job, and it almost looks like something that we see from some really popular anime studios. And I loved that, as it was a good break for the storytelling to not always be that comic book style. Now, the other area where I think this game like really excels is combat. It starts off relatively slow, but that's not even like fair, because in the first hour or two, it's kind of slow. As soon as you start picking up arts, which is really, really early on, which are these special abilities that you have by hitting either the X, circle, or triangle, X, or square button, sorry. And as soon as you kind of pick those up, and then you start realizing that jumping and hitting is also effective, combat gets really fast and furious, and that you're working on the ability to call your own special arts, as they call them, or you can actually like kind of tag in your teammates for them to do a special ability, and so you're kind of watching these gauges fill while you're also hitting the enemy, and I thought that was like really cool. One of the things too, you have a special ability with your sword. It's like a flaming sword that only your character can carry, because your character can't feel pain. And I actually really thought that was cool that they put that in there, because a lot of these kind of games, they get so fantastical, if you will, like that like magical aspect of these games, where they don't explain like, hey, how come that guy can hold a flaming sword? Like, what how come that doesn't hurt? And they even go as far as showing his arms and his clothing burnt by it when you use it, which I thought was like really, really cool. But anyway, if you hold down one of your arts, it actually becomes a flaming sword attack, which I think is really cool as well. The whole screen kind of turns fiery, and you got this big, powerful move. The combat in general, though, I was just blown away by. I really, really enjoyed it. A big fan of Tales of Vesperia, and I thought they did a really good job. And this one even adds to that, because there's all these things that they keep adding as just another element. You know, you've got about 3 or 4 different gauges and different combat detailed mechanics that you're paying attention to. And it almost seems chaotic, yet it all makes perfect sense while you're playing. And I really love that, because sometimes with JRPGs, the combat gets kind of stale. And this is not one of those games. The combat is one of the high points in this game. I also love the fact that you can be running just grinding out some levels for a while, and you'll stumble upon like a mid boss, or even a special enemy who's harder than the boss of the world that you're fighting in. I was in one place and like this great dragon came down, and it was just this like random epic event, and it was awesome. It was great. It kicked my butt, but it was still really cool. And so I really like that aspect of the game. There is not a lot to dislike with this game. I have to say, looking back on it, it's going to be one of those games that I'm going to remember for years. And we haven't had a lot of JRPGs like that. You know, I think of like the old school, like Legend of Dragoon, the Suikoden, Final Fantasy, some of the Final Fantasies, they haven't even been that great, where those stories and the game itself just gives you those like wonderful memories. I feel like this is one of the best JRPGs I've played since Persona 5. And I may even say it's better. But I don't know. I'm torn on that. I wouldn't say it was, you know. I'm really kind of curious though, like what you guys think. Have you played it? Is it something that's on your radar? If not, it definitely should be. It's well worth the money. Everything about this game is fantastic. I say if it's a must-buy if you're into JRPGs. I would be surprised if you haven't gotten it already. If you're on the fence, if you're kind of not sure about it, I would say if you're not sure about JRPGs, this is the one to get. And the reason why is because the combat is so engaging, and the story is simple yet complex. It starts off very simple, very, you know, good versus evil, aspect and then grows into something much bigger. And it keeps you engaged. And those two things, the combat and the story, as long as they're like hitting at tens, then you're good. And that's all you need in a game. And that's what this game does. Through and through, probably my favorite game that has come out this year. And it hit me kind of surprised. I was really excited. Loved Zelda Skyward Sword. Gave that a great score. I think this one's better. I gotta be honest. Like, this might be... And it came out of left field, I gotta be honest. I knew it was coming out. I was gonna buy it, and I was excited to play it. I didn't think it was gonna be this good. And I'm really, really happy with what Bandai Namco has done, and that the JRPG scene is not as tepid as it once was, because now we have a game like this, and it's fantastic. Anyway, guys, I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. If you've played it, if you're gonna buy it, what your thoughts on the whole Telltale series in general are. Any of those things. Please, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. I appreciate y'all. Take care.